Hook, the storm came faster than anyone expected. One moment, snowflakes danced in the wind like feathers, the next, the world outside turned white and silent, deadly silent. The car's engine sputtered, the heater died, and I could see my breath fogging in the freezing air. Beside me sat Mrs. Carter, my best friend's mom, her face pale, her hands trembling as she rubbed them together for warmth. When she turned to me and whispered, "We'll have to keep each other warm," I knew this night would change everything. Not in the way you might think, but in a way that would stay with me for the rest of my life. It all began 2 days before the storm. I just finished my college exams and was heading home for winter break. My best friend, Ethan Carter, had already left earlier that morning, but his mom, Julia, had offered to give me a ride since she was heading the same way. She was always that kind of person, kind, dependable, the type who made sure everyone else was taken care of before herself. We'd known each other for years. I'd spent countless weekends at their house growing up, eating Julia's famous cinnamon rolls, joking around with Ethan, and listening to her stories about when she was young. She wasn't like most parents, she was open, full of warmth, and somehow, she always seemed to understand what people were feeling. That afternoon, the sky was gray and heavy with clouds, but Julia smiled as she loaded the car. "Looks like we'll be racing the storm," she said with a light laugh. I smiled back, completely unaware that those clouds would soon trap us in a night neither of us would forget. We drove for hours, talking about life, dreams, and the weirdness of growing up. I told her how college had been harder than I'd imagined, how sometimes I felt lost, like I was just pretending to have it all together. She listened quietly, nodding, her eyes soft with empathy. "You don't have to have it all figured out," she said gently. "Life isn't about being perfect, it's about staying kind to others and yourself." The snow began just as we crossed into the mountains. At first, it was light flakes swirling beautifully through the air, but soon it thickened into a white curtain that blurred the road ahead. Julia's hands tightened on the steering wheel. "We'll take it slow," she said calmly, but I could hear the concern in her voice. Minutes turned into hours. The road signs disappeared beneath layers of snow, and the world around us became nothing but white and wind. Then, without warning, the car jerked, the tires spun, and we slid sideways into a drift. The engine sputtered once, twice, then went dead. The silence that followed was suffocating. Julia tried to start the car again, but the battery was gone. We were miles from the nearest town, no cell signal, and the temperature dropping fast. The snow beat against the windows like tiny fists. "We'll be okay," I said, trying to sound confident, but my voice shook. She nodded, but her lips were pale. I could see her breath forming in the cold air. Hours passed. The car grew colder. We layered on every piece of clothing we could find, scarves, gloves, extra blankets from the trunk, but it wasn't enough. My fingers went numb. Julia's hands shook as she rubbed them together. Finally, she looked at me and said, voice trembling, "We'll have to keep each other warm." She moved closer, and I hesitated, not out of discomfort, but from the weight of the situation. Here we were, two people, connected by friendship, separated by age, brought together by survival. I wrapped my arms around her, feeling her body shiver against mine. It wasn't strange. It wasn't inappropriate. It was human, raw, desperate, and painfully real. We talked quietly through the night to stay awake, about Ethan, about life, about her late husband. She told me how hard it had been raising a son alone after losing her partner so young. "You never really stop missing someone," she said softly. "You just learn to live around the emptiness." There was something in her words, a strength hidden beneath the pain, that I'd never noticed before. The way she smiled through sorrow, the way she cared without expecting anything back. She'd spent her whole life giving, never realizing how much light she carried in her own heart. At some point, exhaustion took over. I must have dozed off, my arms still around her, the storm raging outside. When I woke up, the morning light was faint, but it was there, and the sound of an engine echoed faintly in the distance. A rescue truck. We were found just in time. Both of us were suffering from mild hypothermia, but we were alive. The rescuers wrapped us in blankets, gave us hot drinks, and drove us to safety. Days later, after the storm cleared, I visited her. She opened the door with a soft smile, tired, but warm. We didn't talk about what happened in the car, not directly. But something between us had changed. There was a quiet understanding, something beyond words. "You know," she said one evening, pouring tea for both of us, "sometimes the coldest nights show you the warmest parts of yourself." I looked at her, at the woman who had once just been my best friend's mom, and realized she was right. That night in the snowstorm wasn't about fear or loneliness, it was about strength, empathy, and the kind of human connection that reminds you you're never truly alone. Years later, when I tell the story, people always ask what happened that night, what she said, what it meant. I always smile and say the same thing. She told me, "We'll have to keep each other warm." And that's exactly what we did, not just with body heat, but with hope, courage, and the simple reminder that kindness can survive even the fiercest storm. And that's how I learned that sometimes, the people who save you aren't the ones you expect. Sometimes, they're the ones who remind you, even in the darkest cold, that there's still warmth left in the world.